In episode 1 of Project 1918, we step inside with those leading the work. We uncover traces of fire and signs of what once lived within. We meet one of the museum's newest members, and we step into the past through the story of the Nash Quad.
We're here at Project 1918 with the M1917 6-ton light tank, and I have Nigel Lawrence. Nigel is the project manager for this vehicle in the 2-vehicle restoration project. So Nigel, I just want to go over the initial assessment of the tank, the condition. We were told when we purchased it and we did inspect it that it was about 98% complete. That's pretty good for a very rare tank, only 20 left in the world. So just give us an overview, what you found, and what you think about the condition of the tank starting the project.
Yeah, well, 98% is a very good number. And once we started to get into the research, I mean, the manuals that we have are very detailed, but the historical research is what tells you a bit of the story as well. And out of the 20 survivors, when you look at the accessories and the equipment and the accoutrements that are on the vehicles, 98% is a very good number for this vehicle. It is quite complete compared to all the rest of the survivors. And it's about the little details that really make the difference.
So like, you know, some restorations are done with a vehicle with like 70% to start. So to have something that's over 100 years old, up in the 90s is pretty good. But right off the bat, there are a couple small things that we're missing, and that 2% missing, and that you've had to do a lot of research on to even just get images of these things. And one of them is the driver's latch. So why don't you talk a little bit about what we fabricated there, where you found that information to get, you know, that replacement latch.
So yeah, this is one of the details where you don't get detailed technical drawings in the manuals on these mechanisms. And what we started with here, you know, of the 98% you talk about, this piece was on here. This came with the tank, and it looks original. It has very good detail on it that I don't think was replicated, so it looks original. This piece was missing. So once I started researching it, pictures of this mechanism are very hard to find.
Because it doesn't seem to be like, you know, the main part of the tank. It's like overlooked in the, you know, in the parts manuals and stuff like that.
That, as well as in historical pictures of this in black and white, I mean, there's only a handful. I mean, there's not a lot. And then every time I saw a picture, somebody was in the picture and they're hiding this particular detail. Right. And then when you look at the 20 survivors and this mechanism here, a lot of people on those tanks, it's a different interpretation. This one here, I tried to pull from the black and white historical pictures, and mechanism-wise, I think it's what they had originally.
So we sent a team up to CFB Borden Museum because they have the shell of an original worthy M1917. Did they find anything? Was it missing its hatch close mechanism? Was that a help at all?
That particular team I didn't get to connect with, but the issue is that a lot of those vehicles are very incomplete.
Right.
And again, this mechanism, I think the Canada War Museum, they have one. It's not the same as this one that I had made. And I think this replicates probably historically what would be accurate. Now, keep in mind as well, as a vehicle like this will come out of production and has some original parts. As they break, there might be field expedient repairs.
That's right.
There might be some updates or changes to these mechanisms.
Well, and even the vehicles themselves, they were produced in different factories, right?
Yes.
And at that time, you know, they're going off of drawings. One built from factory A might be slightly different from factory B. So even with some of the information you're finding online, very difficult. So how does the mechanism work to keep the hatch up and to keep it closed?
Well, without losing my fingers, let me jump in and I'll show you. So, very spry young 5'4" driver. I'm too tall, by the way. Once they access the vehicle, and they sit in the driver's seat without taking an armor bite, it's as simple as this. The French FT has got a beautiful historical picture that shows good detail here. And it's a fancy knurled knob. But basically, it hinges down. Once these armored plates are closed, this hinges down on top of it. There's a locking mechanism in here. And that's basically it. And then when to open it, it locks cams into place, and there's a little locking portion there.
All right, we'll bring that visor down one more time, Nigel. Just want to show the driver's vision slit. A little less than you're used to, you know, with the ABGPs in your training, Nigel.
Oh, this is challenging. This is not much to look through. And again, in the historical, some of the history I found, drivers were being injured from the enemy shooting at these ports.
Right.
Now, these vehicles did not make it to combat theater. So a lot of the information you're reading online, the Americans actually used the French FT.
Right,
In a
so
lot of the battles.
those lessons from the FT.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the driver's compartment here, if we have a look here, we have like, you know, you have your controls, your pedals, the linkages are all still there. One thing I do notice that's missing is, which I've seen from a few American museums, is a bit of a mesh floor that protects all these linkages.
So again, absolutely. If you look down at my foot level here, these are the important linkages, and they're getting stepped on. And that's something, again, challenging to research and find accurate details on. The manuals don't always show you all the accoutrements in the vehicles. This is a type of thing where you'll see some vehicles have a floor covering these and protecting these, and some do not.
And some do not, yeah, I've seen that, and some do not as well. Okay, so in the interior of the vehicle, obviously some of the like small accoutrements, like the sling seat, and you know, you remove some things from the interior so we can start working on it. I noticed the firewall's missing at the back.
Yeah, so we've started to prepare to remove the engine. So we've got the engine out of the other vehicle, and we want to remove the engine out of this one. And so the firewall came off as part of that process, and there's some other parts in the back of the engine compartment that have to come out as well, and that's where we're headed.
It's also showing you the condition of the engine. One thing I find really interesting, on the back of the vehicle, there's the crank to start the engine, but here you can just see there's actually an internal crank so that the crew commander of the vehicle could also turn over and start the engine.
Absolutely. So the engine panel covers this whole portion, and this stubs out through a metal panel, okay? And down at the bottom here, there's a plunger that you push to engage a gear. And the crank handle, we'll see in a bit, you just slip it on here and you can actually crank the engine to start it from inside.
From inside the fighting compartment, cranking the engine. All right, let's have a look at that. You actually have the back firewall out of the vehicle here.
Yeah.
So the rear firewall, obviously, I think this is a holder for a fire extinguisher.
Yep, there's one there and there's one beside the driver in the driver's compartment.
So as you were just showing us, here is where the plunge is and the connection to crank over the engine. Also, I think this opens.
This pops off. There's two hatches.
Right. To give access actually to the engine inside the fighting compartment.
Parts of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, this has come off to be refurbished. Let's have a look at some of the other small kit that came with the vehicle or that you collected.
Yeah, there's a couple of pieces that actually came with it that are quite amazing. So here's the crank handle, and this the previous owner is quite detailed. He describes who manufactured this reproduction crank handle.
In the documentation that came with the vehicle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite detailed.
So it is a cast exact replica. This is the internal crank.
And external as well.
Oh.
So
here on the back of the vehicle.
yeah, we have the tail removed, but normally the tail would be attached at the bottom, and you'll see a lot of times when they park the vehicle, they immediately disconnect the top end here and lower the tail because that's
can
what
get
you need
access
to
to the
do
crank.
to crank this engine over.
Right.
And you'll notice that moves in and out. On the inside, it's actually cammed in a manner that once the engine starts, it'll push this this
So it doesn't rip
mechanism
your arm off.
So yeah,
Yeah.
we like to keep the soldiers sometimes.
Yeah, similar in with someone like the Model Ts. Okay, so again, I'll talk about the condition of the vehicle. Why don't you tell us all about this? Because I know you guys are vacuuming out and cleaning out. We got some pipe cleaner material here. So what are we looking at, Nigel?
So this vehicle came from a previous museum, the last owner, before our museum acquired it. And inside the engine bay, we've had it for about a year now. I've actually had people in here vacuuming out, and there was actually a remnants carcass of a critter that was living in here.
Yeah,
Mice? Non-paying rat. That particular one I think was a rat. It was a big carcass, but just recently, one of the engine covers here, there's a spark plug. This is a 4-cylinder, and what it has is it has a spark plug, and it has another cap that's got a priming cup, and you can see the priming cups on the other 3 cylinders.
Right, so each cylinder actually has the priming cup and the spark plug.
Yes.
So that's 4 cylinders.
4 cylinders. This was missing when we acquired it. And just recently, one of our members found a nest that was all the way inside this one particular cylinder. And so all of that came out of here. So that's the condition that we're going to be dealing with to restore this engine.
Right, yeah, and so those rodents living in the hull of the vehicle, that's very rare. Living in the engine of the vehicle, because it had been sitting static since the 1960s. Another thing I really wanted to ask you about, as you guys were assessing this, and now that we have the back engine deck open, we know both from lore, because there's very few of these vehicles that exist, and the few in the United States, the community knows all about. This one has not been running since the 1960s. So we were told that last time it moved under its power, it was from the 1960s, and then it was sitting static. It may have been pulled around inside the museum over the decades. But you and your team have found evidence of an engine fire inside this compartment. So let's have a look at that and just tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so Paul, we're all involved in different aspects of this vehicle and the research and the restoration. So as we start pouring over it, Paul noticed that, yeah, there definitely was a fire. And if you look, you'll see charring, and this area's got charring. It's very black, but also you can see the wires, and the covering for the wires show some evidence of melting.
Melting on the wires, yeah.
All right, and then this would be the coolant hose that connects to the radiator, and this looks like it's been melted, and then you see some charring as well. And the charring has done the wires on this side. Of course, the carburetor and the fuel comes in from this vacuum tank on this side of the engine. This is the exhaust side. And there's a lot of charring on this side. This side, actually, there's very little. So that's just another issue that we have to contend with.
Yeah, when you get up and close. So, complete, but not without its challenges. And, finding the history of this vehicle, sometimes it's the untold history of the vehicle that you find when you get deep into it. Because I haven't read anywhere about this vehicle actually having an engine fire.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Nigel, thanks for showing us the condition of the vehicle. What are the next steps? So what will the team see in the coming videos of you guys taking this apart? You said you're taking apart the engine. Are there plans to take apart and refurbish the track and the suspension? Let us know.
Yeah, so this vehicle needs to be prepared. So the steel has to be brought back down. So it's going to be blasted by a professional company, and then it's going to be primed. And it's going to be primed, tinted primer, and then we're going to do the final coat of paint of whatever we choose here.
So that's on the external and internal hull of the vehicle? Internal
as well, yeah. Okay. And actually, on the inside right now, you see green, but you can actually see, and we saw it on the bulkhead earlier there, you see remnants of white paint. And in some of the historical pictures, even though they're black and white, you can see right in the factory, the interior, including the engine compartment and the crew compartment, is white.
So even at this early date, 1918, American armored vehicles with a white interior over 100 years ago, just like they are today, unlike the silver interiors and other interiors we see from other countries. That's pretty interesting. Okay, and so the engine comes out, the hull, interior, exterior hull, blasted, cleaned up, primed, ready to paint, while the engine's being worked on. What about the track and suspension? Let me have a look.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, in order to do this properly, we have to disassemble the track. So the track is going to come apart into segments like this one here. So the individual tracks are going to be treated as well. So the hull will come up with what the paint scheme is going to be for the hull, and the tracks will likely be black. And but all of this has to come apart in order to properly be done.
Each individual link, and you can see each one is a solid cast piece. This one came with the vehicle. It's complete. It has all of its track links. This one was just extra.
Yep.
Probably going to get cleaned up and go on display.
And as well as part of that is we have to manufacture some replacement parts. So each one of these tracks is held in with pins. And then there's a, you can call it a cotter pin, but if you look down here,
Yeah.
this pin is missing. So there's a cross pin that holds the tracks together, and then there's a cotter pin. So if you go to a track where it's in, there's a pin that goes in and is bent, and that's what holds it in on both sides.
Yeah, and you can see there's some missing and some broken all along the way.
Yep.
So yeah, we have moved this tank a few times. We've rolled it. I mean, I even was in it while we were rolling it into the building, but yeah, that's definitely gonna be a problem once we eventually get it out in the field. Now, I'm not sure if it's come into your research, but you know, when I was doing my research on the M1917, I found that like in certain parts of the suspension, they were even using stuff like horsehair on the FT17 to dampen the suspension and also for some lubrication. You haven't come across anything like that in the manual in the American version?
I haven't found that yet, but this track system and the vehicle itself and the engine is almost like a train engineer. And if you picture the old train engineer with an oil can,
Yeah.
running around on a regular basis oiling things, there are parts of the engine that require daily oiling, but also the track. One of the amazing things I read in the history of this vehicle is they talked about building a bath, a small shallow bath. So you see them for modern tanks where they'll wash the tracks.
Right.
The bath they talked about for this was in order to oil the tracks.
A bath that the tank would actually dip
Drive
into,
through, yeah.
that would oil.
Yeah.
Well,
and you're going to picture this, all the oil dripping.
Yeah.
Oil collects dust and dirt, so it's a lot of maintenance.
And there was a lot of modernizations or industrial modernizations on the M1917 over the FT17, and we'll try to do a comparison. I'm going to look for a picture, and maybe we'll find it in the future video on the at least a diagram of the M1917 track oil bath.
Oh, that'll be a good one if you can find it.
All right, well, thanks, Nigel, for the update. Again, you're going to see this track come apart. You're going to see the engine come out. We're going to get deeper inside the vehicle, maybe once the turret's off, and we can get a better angle. But this is our starting condition of the M1917. So I'll see you next time on Project 1918. Okay, so Ross, you've joined us here at the Canadian Tank Museum, I think, just this year, right?
Yeah.
Did you come to a tank show? Did you hear about us on the internet? Like, what brought you to the Canadian Tank Museum?
Yeah, I've always had a fascination for tanks and the logistical vehicles involved in the Army. It just catches my attention. I'm a member of the Historic Construction Equipment Association up in Simcoe County, so we work on bulldozers and Euclids and a whole bunch of old construction equipment. But back in my history, I've done a lot of stuff like this. I was working in a Model T delivery shop. We were building Model T bodies and restoring Model Ts when I was 18.
Really?
Yeah.
So you've been around, probably actually more than some of our members, you've been around some of this vintage of equipment for a lot of your restoration career. So you thought you'd bring those skills here, not just working on tanks, but working on like First War and early Second War vehicles.
Yeah, my fabrication skills and my disassembly skills, and that's all I was doing for this.
Yeah.
For Model Ts, they're very universal. You can see the frames are pretty much the same on this, just a smaller version of the Nash frame would be underneath this Model T right here. I'm used to working with rivets and stuff like that. Have a little experience about doing a little bit of forging and some welding and some other stuff like that too.
Rivets and forging. We're here. We heard it here first. Well, Ross, it's good to have you on the team.
Thank you.
We're going to get to know you and your experience with these vehicles a bit better as we go through the project. Thanks for being on board.
Okay, thank you.
So what we're looking at here is actually on the rear of the Nash Quad. This is the box that carries the ammunition on the ammunition carrier. So it's here in the back restoration shop, getting some more attention. And so what it's actually sitting on right now is a donor frame from another Nash, because we purchased this in the United States so we could finish our quad. So let us know what's going on here.
So what I'm doing here is I've gotten the box loose from the cross members. Right here, there was a cross member here. They're very rusted. They did a lot of rivet construction, not bolts, not a lot of welding. Welding kind of came in 1921, 22, somewhere in that time frame. And right now they're very keen on using rivets to hold everything. The rivets are a very good secure way of putting everything together. You can see the rivets up here. And it involves putting a stud with a head on it, like a round head, push through, and you got to heat up the other side, then it mushrooms out. So I've already taken off some cross members, which you've seen on the other room. I took off one cross member here, one there. I got 2 more to go. I've been jacking it up. The method I've been using, I kind of go old school, so I use a grinder to get it down. And eventually I get it off, cut off flush, and then I go at it with a chisel, get a little bit of prying on. This stuff is 100 years old and it's held very well up to this point.
And so you're knocking off like the rivet head.
Yeah, I cut the head off and then I knock the rivet out that way.
Okay. So that's what it looks like, with like a rivet through the metal, not a bolt. Okay, the technology of the time. So getting the ammunition box off of the donor frame is a lot more work than just twisting a couple bolts.
Yeah, it's more work than twisting a couple bolts, right? I've done this before.
And then you're also telling me that when we're reattaching it, we're actually going to, and you actually personally, we're going to re-rivet it onto the other chassis so that it's accurate.
Yeah, I'm going to use hot rivets.
And we haven't...
Push them in, get a couple of guys bucking on the other side. They're going to hold it together. They're going to hold one end, and I'm going to be pressing the mushroom at the other head, probably with a hammer.
So breaking a new frontier here, because this once again is a new era of vehicles that we've never worked on before. Breaking rivets and making new rivets.
Hi there, I'm Sam, the curator of the Canadian Tank Museum, and welcome to Project 1918. Through this series, we're exploring the history of our Nash Model 4017F and our Renault M1917 tank. Join me as we look into the history of these two quintessential vehicles that are such a crucial part of the Canadian tank story. This stripped-down frame behind me is all that's left of our Nash Model 4017F right now, but it's surprising to discover, actually, that four-wheel drive technology is not nearly as much a modern innovation as we might think it actually is. In the early 1900s, when the car was in its infancy outright anyway, there were already four-wheel drive vehicles being produced in both Europe and North America. And in the latter, the Badger four-wheel drive auto company of Clintonville, Wisconsin in the United States was producing four-wheel drive trucks and cars as early as 1909. They dropped that Badger moniker the following year and just went on as four-wheel drive auto company, but they continued on producing vehicles for commercial sale all across North America. Around the same time, Thomas Buckland Jeffrey, with his son Charles, set up their bicycle company in nearby Kenosha, Wisconsin, to begin manufacturing cars. In 1902 alone, they produced 1,500 units of their well-known Rambler car series. Thomas sadly passed away in 1910, so it was under Charles' leadership at the company that the development of the Nash Quad began. The U.S. Army approached the company with the idea of procuring a light and versatile truck that could replace the four-mule teams that had been supplying the American forces for decades. To that end, though, the truck had to be highly capable in off-road maneuvers. In a feat beyond compare by 1913 standards, the company turned out a truck that was not only four-wheel drive, but had four-wheel braking, four-wheel steering, and even locking forward and rear differentials. It was named the Quad for all these features, and even though it was a bit slow, sand, mud, and gravel posed little challenge for it, and this would be crucial in the conflict that was to lie ahead. In 1914, as war broke out, the Canadian Expeditionary Force placed its order for 50 Nash Quads to support its troops at the front, and British and French Army orders followed not long thereafter. The truck proved itself highly capable on the front line, towing artillery pieces, hauling ammunition, water, fuel, and other vital supplies to troops in need, even in places where horses could not manage to go. A pivotal moment came when Charles survived the sinking of the ocean liner RMS Lusitania in 1915 when it was torpedoed by a German U-boat. Rethinking his priorities in life, he decided to sell his company to Charles Nash the following year, and the truck continued to be supplied to the Entente forces on the front lines under the new moniker Nash Quad. The Nash Model 4017 was available in three distinct versions, the A, L, and F. The museum's version is the F model that was built in 1918, and it is mainly distinct from the other two in the sense of having a standard two-wheel steering setup rather than the four-wheel steering that was included on the other two models. The F and the L models are otherwise similar in the sense that they have the acetylene generator and searchlight, oil side and tail lamps, and the magneto impulse starter. The only other distinction being that the F has only a speedometer, while the L has both a speedometer and odometer. The A, meanwhile, only has the odometer, and all that other equipment I just mentioned is electric. The Nash Quad could be fitted with a number of different body types depending on the role it was intended to fill. For instance, it could have a tank body to serve as a fuel truck, or it could have a model 1918 artillery supply body to have spare parts or ammunition to deliver to frontline artillery units. This example, though, will be restored with this model 1918 2-ton ammunition supply body, which, along with ammunition, could be used to deliver radio or telephone equipment, rations, baggage, and personnel to the front lines. Following the war's end, the Nash Quad service continued in British Empire forces until about 1925, with some units serving on the northwest frontier in British India. Otherwise, 41,674 units had been produced by the time production ceased in 1928, with its use continuing in a civilian capacity in forestry and agricultural industries for decades beyond. Sadly, the Nash Quad's departure from military service after the First World War was pretty unceremonious. For such a widespread vehicle that was so vital in sustaining the Canadian war effort, there were few examples of photo and video documentation of its use in action. The Canadian Tank Museum hopes that by restoring its Model 4017F here into working condition, that it can shed new light on its legacy and help our visitors appreciate how this vehicle mechanized and supplied Canada's fighting forces in the First World War. Thank you very much for joining us today for this video on the Nash Model 4017F. If you're enjoying our series on Project 1918, join us next time where you'll hear about the restoration of this tank right here, our Renault M1917. And if you're enjoying our content, please follow us on social media, support us on Patreon, and come visit us sometime where you'll get to see these vehicles and many more on display for your enjoyment. Thank you very much.